Okay, today I'm going to run you through the process of how I grind my heads here at home without a beveling table. And so after they're cleaned up, the first step I use is I take a Sharpie and I mark the center of the edge on the head with a thin line so that I can see where the middle of that piece is. And that keeps me on the right side of the fence, so to speak, and I don't end up taking too much off on one side. But that's the first step. Okay, the next step will be to put all your PPE on, your safety apron. What I use is a farrier's apron. It's leather. That way you don't have sparks causing any burn problems to cloth. So this is a well-used one, as you can tell. This has been through, I can't tell you how many hundreds of heads, still standing up. Ear protection, gloves, and a 60 grit flap disc on my grinder, 4.5 inch angle grinder. And then what I have here is a Harbor Freight welding table that I mounted this clamp down handle to. And what it does is it holds my head in place for me. I set the fence up high on this end, set my head in place, get a clearance, put the handle down, lock it down. Now it's in place while I do my grinding on this bevel. And what I'll do is I'll do this bevel first across here and round these edges off on this quarter of the head. Then we'll turn it around and do the rest. And we'll go through all four sides, okay, so to speak. And as you can see, I've left about a 32nd of an inch of steel still above my line. And I've feathered that bevel back about 3/4 of an inch to where you can see the total width of it. And that's all on the same plane. And I've done it all by just changing the angle on my grinder as I work it across. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to clean up the weld, make it look a little prettier, a little nicer for the finish, and bevel these edges off. Okay, now we'll take it out of the vice clamp and spin it around, do the other half of it. Okay, now that we've got both sides done, we'll flip it over and do the exact same process on this side. So when you get done, you're going to end up with this unfinished edge here, and with a constant bevel that comes back, a consistent bevel that comes back about 3/4 of an inch. I've just cleaned it back a little bit farther to make it, give it a nice finished bevel, what we call the primary bevel here. Secondary bevel will bring you right down to the black line for the finish. Now we'll go ahead and we'll finish the last corner here, and then we'll be ready, clean it up and ready for final finish. Okay, so when we're done with this step, we should be looking at something like this. We've got the welds ground off, all the edges are finished. Our welds are cleaned up here on the faces, and we've got about the same tolerances all the way through on the edges, so we can go through and put our final edge on. And for putting the final edge on, I use a full face shield because it has a tendency to throw pieces. And if you caught me earlier not saying to put on your eye protection, when you put on your ear protection and your hands and your gloves, then you caught me on that one. But always put your eyes and ears on for protection. Okay, now we've got our final bevel on the edge. It's not sharp by any means, but it's close enough to where folks can take a file and finish it up. We only make them that sharp. If it's a used target, that's plenty sharp to stick in it. If it's a brand new target, it may be a little bit tough, but most folks want to take a file and sharpen them up, but we just don't want to deal with people getting cut with them and cutting ourselves as we're working with them from this point, so we leave them actually fairly dull. But there's to the rough finish. I'll take a 6-inch sanding disc next, and we'll clean up these bevels, make those look nice and pretty, and then it'll be ready for finish. Okay, for the final step, what I do, and this is completely optional, Coach, if you guys want to do this or not. With your finish, you may not need it if you're powder coating, but what I do is I come back with a 120 grit 6-inch sanding disc, and I clean up this bevel. So there's what it looks like finished in that corner and that quarter of the head, and then we'll flip it around and do the rest of it. But you can see the difference of just what that little bit of time did as far as the finish. And since I paint it, you know, it just makes my finish look better. And then with my process, That takes about 30 minutes, and this is what I come up with before I get ready for the paint.